Alrighty, Psalm 62. Psalm 62. Apologize in advance. The outline has 31 pages. So we'll see how this goes. I'm not sure. So lately, I don't know if this is an affect of my the psoriasis stuff I'm working through and all that, or what it is, but I'm having a hard time with my vision being clear, and so the text is kind of big, but I don't know if it's 31 pages big or if that's just, it blew up into a big subject. And so, no, unfortunately not. It's 10 points, so it may be that there's just 31 pages worth of material here. We'll see. All right, Psalm 62, verse number 5. Psalm 62, and verse number 5, the Bible says, "My soul, wait thou only." And I have that underlined. If you underline in your Bible, you might do the same. Only, not other things, only upon the Lord, upon God. For my expectation is from Him. It says there, "My soul, wait thou only upon God, for my expectation is from Him." Jeremiah 17:5. Jeremiah 17:5. Jeremiah 17:5. Let's see who gets there. Chris, when you get there, read it, please. Miss Magnan's got the sword drill beat here.
17:5?
Yes, sir.
"Thus saith the Lord, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, and maketh flesh his arm, and whose heart departeth from the Lord."
Yeah, so Psalm 62:5 tells us to trust only in the Lord, or wait only upon the Lord, and that our expectation is from God. Jeremiah 17:5. Isn't it neat how sometimes these verses that talk to each other are both the same, like 5 and 5? You may not think that's cool. I think it's cool. And so he said there, "Thus saith the Lord, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, and maketh flesh his arm, whose heart departeth from the Lord." So Psalm 62:5 says we're trusting in God, we're waiting upon God. And Jeremiah 17:5 says, I'm trusting in man, and I'm departed from the Lord, not waiting upon the Lord, right? I'm departed from the Lord, and that is a curse. Now, have you ever noticed that sometimes it's not the biggest event or the biggest issue, right, that causes us the most grief? It's the expectation behind that event. It's not necessarily what occurred, but what we thought should occur versus what occurred that causes us the most grief. You might not be able to pick up on that in the midst of what you're going through, but if you look back upon it, you might realize that that's the case. That we weren't waiting upon God, we were trusting in men. And so what we have is something called a broken expectation. And that's a problem. It's not always the words that were said, it's what we thought was going to be said. It's not always the decisions that were made, it's what we thought should or would be made. It's not even the betrayal, quote unquote, itself, but what we thought was going to be the issue, right? I thought that I would never be hurt by my spouse. Now, number one, somebody didn't tell you the truth. If you're married, you will be hurt by each other. It's going to happen. And if you don't expect that, it's going to cause you grief. So we got to work on expectations, right? Sometimes what crushes us is, I didn't think it would go this way. Or I didn't think they would do this. Or I did not think I would respond that way, right? I know when I'm surprised, it's when I respond correctly. That's usually when I'm pretty shocked, right? And so, or early on, especially in my journey. But here's the thing, or maybe I didn't think that after all this time I'd still hurt as much as I hurt, right? Have expectations upon yourself. There are people here this morning who aren't carrying pain alone. You're carrying pain born through disappointment. And disappointment has a way of expanding the pain and expounding the pain, because often when we suffer one disappointment and we're hurt because of it, we then put another expectation in place to try to correct the expectation that is broken. And if we don't learn the right way, it's still going to be the wrong expectation. It's still going to be broken. Well, I've been hurt by this, but now, in a few months, we'll get through all this and it'll be okay. You just put another expectation in place, and that could be a problem. Is there anything wrong with expectations? Not if you're waiting upon God. Right? Not if, as Psalm 62:5 says, your expectations come from Him. We'll get into that. Many expected the marriage to be different, the child to turn out differently, the conversation you had planned on for days. Any of you do that, where you think for days on a conversation that's going to be difficult? You're way overthinking this, right? And you plan and plan and plan and plan, and then you put the plan in place, and the moment the first word comes out of your mouth, the plan goes awry. Yeah, and because you expected all this planning was going to do it. And they say in military, right? Every good military plan only survives the first shot, right? And so it's the same thing here in our lives. You expected an apology from somebody else to be real. You expected yourself to be stronger by now. When the expectation broke, something inside of you broke as well. And something between you and God broke, right? Because you had trusted men, but you blame God when men fail. We do that. You don't have to argue about it. It's true. You didn't just get hurt. You got unsettled, angry, bitter, confused, blaming, wallowing. Now, if you don't know what the word wallow means, that's what pigs do in the mud. They waller. They make a waller and then they wallow in it, right? And so, but that's what we do. It's actually also called victimhood, right? And it's where we become a victim, and we wallow in the hurt, and we let the hurt run through our minds over and over until it becomes who we are. And it comes from a broken expectation. We withdraw from God because of it. Many times, the real battle isn't over what happened. The real battle is over where my expectation was. This is, like I said, this is a big subject. And it's a very important subject. The Bible has a lot to say about broken expectations. And I want to talk about it here as we move forward. Psalm 62:5, my soul, wait thou only upon God, for my expectation is from Him. We could preach that verse, a whole message about that verse, and that's kind of what this is circled around, though we will go to an actual ensample from the Old Testament to walk through it. He doesn't say, my soul wait upon circumstances, my soul wait upon people, my soul wait upon my own ability to figure everything out and make everything work. Anybody in here like that? You're the fixer? You like to fix everything? And you've been broken by your own expectations of your own self. I tell you, I like to fix things, and there are some things you can't fix. And if you expect that you're never going to fail, you're always going to push through, you're going to one day hit a wall that's too thick, and you're going to find yourself in this place. He said there, only upon the Lord, and that word matters. When your expectation is from somewhere else beside God, your soul is jerked around by that thing instead of by God. Your emotions are run by that thing instead of by God. Here's the thing. I'm not a Stoic. I like the Stoic thought process of not having any emotion and just kind of living life based on just the facts, ma'am. I like that process, but it's not true, right? We all have emotions. God gave us emotions, but the emotion should not lead the man or lead the woman. And when we have expectations in something other than God, that expectation is what drives us and leads us and pushes us along instead of God. And even if our expectations are quote unquote in God, but they're not from God, then they're going to lead us along and they're going to cause us troubles. Let me use an illustration that's near and dear to my heart. When we found out about Saber's passing in November, it broke something in me for a certain reason, many things, but one reason was I had every expectation of a reconciliation. I had every expectation of a prodigal son, father, running down the lane, reconciling one day. And when I got that call, guess what happened? That was a broken expectation. I explained it to one pastor when I was talking to them, kind of grieving and working through some things. I explained it as my hope died that day because my hope was in the wrong thing. My expectation was in the wrong thing. When our expectation is in an outcome or a person, when our expectation of a person they fail, it's going to shake up your faith. When our expectation is an outcome and it doesn't occur, it's going to shake your faith up. If your expectation is in yourself, you're going to fail it. Right? You're going to cause your own. That's a bad one because when you fail yourself, it's very hard to overcome. Right? Because you can't just walk away. Somebody else fails you, you can kind of move forward. You can push through that in the flesh and walk away, slam that door and go. But when expectation's in yourself and you fail, that's very tough. And when your expectation is from God, you may be grieved, you may have a difficult time, but you will not be destroyed because God has sent that to you. God knows what's going to happen. And if God's working in your heart and God's working, come on up here. Okay, Sunday school's pretty far along now, so come on up here. And if God's working in your heart, then it's gonna be different if your expectation's from Him. Now, Jeremiah 17:5, where we were earlier, Jeremiah 17:5. The Bible says, and we've read it, but we're going to read through verse 8. Jeremiah 17:5, verse 17:5 through 8. Thus saith the Lord, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, and maketh flesh his arm, and whose heart departeth from the Lord. For he shall be like the heath in the desert, and he shall not see when good cometh, but shall inhabit the parched places in the wilderness, in a salt land and not inhabited. So you see there, that when your expectation, when you're following after men, then you're going to end up in a desert where there is no nourishment, where there is no help. Verse 7, blessed is a man that trusteth in the Lord, and whose hope is in the Lord. So Chris read verse 5 earlier, where you're cursed if your trust is in man, and verse 7 here says you're blessed if your trust is in God. Now, there's a companion verse. I did not write it down, but I should have. Over in Psalm chapter 1, we won't go there, but I'm going to just kind of quote it to you. You can write it in your notes. Blessed is a man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, right? So, what is verse 1 saying? Blessed is a man who does not trust in those three people. But verse 2 says, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and in His law doth he meditate day and night. So we see the same contrast in Jeremiah 17:5 and 7 as we see in Psalm 1 and 2, 1 and 2. That same contrast of if you trust in man, it's a curse and a problem. And if you trust in God, it's blessing and stability. Right? It's blessing and stability. Does that mean if you trust in trust in God, that man won't fail? No. It means that your trust is in God, and so man's failure is expected, is understood. You see, we often like to bluster about others' failures while we allow our own to go, right? In both ways, we're causing issues with us and them. Now, verse 8, for he shall be like a tree, as a tree. You see there? Planted by the waters that spreadeth out her roots by the river, and shall not see when the heat cometh. You see that stability? That tree that's planted by the rivers of water and its roots are deep in the water doesn't see the heat. What does that mean? The heat bears down on that tree, But because it's planted by the river of water, it doesn't feel it. Doesn't shake me. Because I'm planted, spiritual allegory here, right? I'm planted in the Lord, so the heat that comes my way, it doesn't bother me. I don't see it because I see the Lord so deeply every day. And by the way, Psalm says that, right? Meditates upon it when? Day and night. Not just day, not just morning, not just evening, day and night. When I remember, some counselees, I encourage our counselees to not just have their morning devotion, but write it on a card. Take a picture of it and carry it with you through the day so that you have something to look at and meditate on. If God spoke to you that morning, why not look at it throughout the day? Meditate upon it so that you refresh your inner self all throughout the day. And God gave it to you for the day, right? Right? And so if you carry it with you, then it might be useful. So, and it says there, he shall not see when the heat cometh, her leaf shall be green, and shall not be careful in the year of drought, neither shall cease from yielding fruit. The Lord draws a contrast. One man trusts in the Lord, one man trusts in man. One dries up. I should say these in the opposite way. One trusts in man, one trusts in the Lord. One dries up, one is rooted and grounded in God, and he does not wither under the weight of problems. One lives in parched ground, and the other one bears fruit, even in the midst of a drought. Why? Because he's planted by a river of water. Because God never brings drought. It's drought that comes from outside, right? Now, I'm not saying, misunderstand me, there is drought that comes, God allows it, but when we're in the Lord, when we're settled in Him and we're walking with Him, we never face or suffer that drought in our spirit. We can always have water that will refresh us and keep us going. Notice carefully, the passage does not say that one trusting in the Lord never faces heat, but that he does not see the heat. It says she does not see the heat, but it does not see the heat. So you do face it. You do face drought, but you bear fruit. And you face heat, but you don't see it. And your leaves stay green. That means you stay refreshed and you stay in good shape. The heat still comes, the drought still comes, the hard still comes. But when I'm rooted in God, my expectation, as Psalm 62:5 says, when my expectation is from God, what does that mean? God, give me my expectations. So God, what do you want me to think about this situation? What do you want me to think about this person? I don't mean that you keep everybody at arm's length because all people are going to fail you, and so I'm not going to have any good expectations from them. I'm saying get them from God. And we'll talk about that. It goes hand in hand also with forgiveness. And you'll see why here in a little bit if we get there. Page 5. We're almost there. Only 31 pages and we're on page 5. So y'all just hang on. Our common problem many times, or the rooted man, I'll say this first, the rooted man survives when the shallow man can't because his stability isn't in the weather, it's in the roots. And when your stability is not in men, but in God, you stay stable. You stay grounded, as if I can say it that way. Our problem many times is we try to get stable fruit with shallow roots. We try to have a good life and a stable life, but we're grounded and rooted in happenstance, in circumstance, same thing, in people, in situations. Our happiness and our grounding is in that. If you're always up and you're always down and you're always spinning round and round, then you have an issue. It's because you're letting the winds of this world spin you and toss you. And God doesn't want that for you. It says over in Philippians chapter 4, verse 4 verse 6, be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. Be careful for what? Nothing. What does care mean? Worried about it. It means full of care. I don't think you should jump off a roof. I think you should take the ladder. But you shouldn't be careful for anything, meaning you shouldn't be full of care. Right? You shouldn't worry about it. You shouldn't let it run around in your head on a train track with no end. Ladies, the spaghetti trails in there, you need to let God line them out. And you need to stay on. You need to let Him deal with that thing up there. Oh, I've been married 26 years. I know how it is. And I'm saying you got to work through that. You got to let God stop the train. Get off that crazy train. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said it that way. It just happened to come out of my head. My apologies. But get off of that. I know the carnal people in here because they're like, yeah, I listened to that this morning on the way to church. It was on the radio, or it was in the back seat, my kids. And so, just kidding. When I had little ones, it sometimes felt like there was a crazy train in the car. And so, but here's the thing, that we got to, ladies, you got to let that go. You got to get off of that thing. You got to turn it over to God, and you got to say, God, what should I think? What my expectations need to be? And so, it says, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, maketh flesh his arm. It means if I make flesh my support, I have chosen a weak foundation. Some of you aren't falling apart because God failed you. You're falling apart because your expectations in people failed you. And we gotta fix that. I believe, you don't have to, but I meet wrong people all the time. And I believe that God has the answer for every situation in His Word. And here's the big one, expectation. We tell this to our counselees as well. Be patient with yourself. Right? You're going to fail, so fix your expectations in yourself. Right? Sometimes we get up and we have a bad day and we sin all day long and do stupid things all day long. And then at the end of the day, when we finally come to ourselves, we say, oh my, I'm a worthless failure. And then we get up the next day and you don't do your devotion, your time with the Lord, and you don't, pray, and you have another sin-filled day, and at the end of that day you say, dang, 2 in a row. And so you get up the next day and say, what's the point? Why? Because your expectations were wrong. You're going to fail. And so you need to understand that. I know I'm encouraging. Look, guys, no matter how hard you try, you're going to fail. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, because it's the biggest truth you've ever heard preached to yourself. And so now that we got that out of the way, how do we deal with that, right? And so number 2 out of 10, broken expectations often cause anger, right? Turn over to Genesis 4, where we get the bulk of our illustration of a broken expectation. Genesis chapter 4. And verse number 3. Genesis 4, verse number 3. The Bible says, in the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. And Abel, he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and his offering, but to Cain and his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. Cain brings an offering. God does not accept Cain's offering. Cain becomes angry. Wroth, it says there. Wrath is anger with a strong desire to avenge. And did Cain have a desire to avenge? Where did it stem from? He had an expectation that God was going to accept his sacrifice. He said, I'm grown. Now, any men tell me I'm grown, that's the first step to understanding they don't know what they're talking about. I'm sorry. Because if you're grown, you won't have to tell me I'll know it, because you'll be taking care of all your responsibilities. I've had people in prison tell me that. They're standing on the other side of bars. I have to open their bean chute to put food in. I have to roll my finger at the picket to have their door opened. I have to escort them to the yard, to the shower, to their legal things. I have to do all of that. And I'll have somebody tell me, when I worked there in the past, somebody tell me, you can't tell me what to do, I'm grown. Cool. You want to go to the shower? So, but what happens? Cain said, I'm grown. I got this. Abel, you do the coat, skin, animal thing. We got to eat food. You know, they haven't been told they can eat animals yet, right? So we got to have food. So I'm going to grow food. And by the way, I work real hard at this, and God's going to God knows if I work really hard, He's going to accept it because He knows how much labor I put into that food. And so I'm going to harvest it. I'm going to take it to God and He's going to accept it because He knows how hard I work. And He knows that I don't like nasty, dirty animals because you can't eat those things anyway. And He knows that. And you know, I kind of wonder, I think they probably still spoke back then. Right? Because we know in the garden they didn't. It's only just a child, a young adult's lifetime away from the garden right here. So Cain's probably like, that lamb said, hi, I can't do it. And he took his offering. And God said, no, Cain, I told y'all. Remember the story Mom and Dad told you about the skins and the covering and the forgiveness that I gave them because of those things? Cain, that's not what you could have gone. Abel would have provided. And Cain probably also said, oh, I don't need provided for. I got this. And he expected God to accept it. And God said no. And Cain got mad. You ever get mad because what you wanted to happen didn't? I mean, like, you set a cup on the countertop, and somehow that cup rolled off the countertop and fell and broke, and you thought, and you got mad about it? Why? Because you expected, I'm getting silly. The cat comes and whack! I'm getting silly, but here's the thing. If you can't figure it out in those small, silly things, are you going to be able to do it in the big ones? I don't know how many times I've set something on my dash driving down the road, and I don't care how long, it'll ride there for 700 miles. But the moment I'm getting ready to pull to a stop or something somewhere, I've stopped 700 different times, and I've had my cup sitting here on the armrest thinking, oh, it'll be all right for one more, I'll just sit over here and stop. And 700 times I've stopped at a red light, and that thing's sat there. And in this one time, that thing flies forward, goes up under my brake pedal, and now I'm going, okay, throw it in park and brake, I don't know. And getting all mad because why? I had bad expectation. And I got mad. Cain expected acceptance, approval. He expected God to receive what he wanted to bring. Can I tell you that, Christian? We do that too. We expect God to accept what we bring instead of bringing what he accepts. Yeah, we do. Well, I can live my life like this. It's okay. It's my life. I can live it. Thank goodness God forgave me, and he's going to have to accept what I am. No, I'm sorry. That's a bad expectation. And you're going to be disappointed. Because the Bible says, be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. And so when we ask God to accept us, we got to understand that God doesn't accept what we bring what he accepts. And we got to put that into practice in our life too. When expectation was broken, he got wroth, his countenance fell, and that's how many of us do. I'm angry because of what happened, but really they're angry because they did not think it would happen. They're angry because they thought something different would happen. They're angry because they had their way, their expectation. And hey, spouses, you do this. I wanted this person to be this way. They weren't that way. Okay, well, if you married a man, probably weren't what you thought they were. I mean, even if they're good men, right? Because they don't pass gas and close the window and push the lock button when you're dating. They wait till you're married. I had a friend do that. I mean, they were on their honeymoon. They were leaving for the cruise, right? And so they were going on a cruise for the honeymoon. They were getting ready to go, and they're on their way down there. And he rips one, locks the windows. What do you think happened? Anger occurred. Broken expectations. He was so perfect. What's that? Death? Who said what?
No, Stephen said divorce.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still pretty early on. Was that real? I mean, is the ink dried? Have they submitted those documents to the county yet? Maybe if we tear the documents up now, they don't get to the county, it's not really a divorce. And so, yeah, but the point is, he was never gross before we got married. Yes, he was. You just didn't know. And a great man, great husband. They're still married somehow. Still married, but it's just a funny illustration, right? That it's a broken expectation. Women, you do the same thing. You heard that story about the man that met the really beautiful lady? Oh, she was gorgeous. And they dated. They went to eat. They did all these things. Then they got married. They went to the honeymoon. And they come in and he's like, all right, I'm excited. We're married the rest of our life. And they're getting ready for bed. And she goes over and takes off her hair. You know, she takes off her false leg, pulls out her false teeth, sets them all on the dresser, takes her eyelashes off. Sorry, those of you that have fake eyelashes. She wipes off all the makeup and fillers. And he's like, whoa. Different expectations there. I'm not saying y'all have false legs. But there's always more to the story. And our expectations have to come from God, not from men. Because when they come from men, it's a curse. And it's trouble. And it's anger and problems. The wife says, I didn't think he'd treat me this way. By the way he treats his mom is the way he'll treat you. Ladies, just a hint. I mean, if mom's a dumpster fire, modify that just a little bit. But, you can even be kind to that. But the way he treats mom, the way he's going to treat you. The way she treats her daddy, yeah, get ready. Here it's coming. The husband says, I didn't think she'd respond that way. Didn't you see how she responded to the waitress, the clerk, the gas station attendant? The parent says, I don't think my child would choose that. I thought they'd be okay. The believer says, I didn't think all these years I would still struggle in this place. But we do. Anger often grows in the soil of broken expectations. Often. Proverbs 13:12 says this, hope deferred make the heart sick, but when the desire has come, it's a tree of life. So what do? What is that? Explain that to me. Hope deferred. You had your hope in the wrong thing, and it caused your heart to be sick. But when the desire has come, so when you have the desire in the right thing, and God brings that, because if our desires match His desires, we'll see it working out, that when the desire comes, it's a tree of life. Hope deferred is expectation delayed, denied, and shattered. Makes the heart sick. Physically worn down because of disappointed expectation. Lives that are chaotic because you thought everything was going to be a certain way, and it's not. Right? If you want peace in this life, you got to understand that it doesn't come as the world giveth peace. It comes as God gives peace. And you got to understand that and get your expectations right. I'm telling you, when I started putting this all together, it got big fast. And I don't know that we're going to finish today. We're not. I know we're not, because there's no way I can get through the next 20 pages in the next 5 minutes. So y'all just kind of take notes, hang on through the next week, and we'll get you there, okay? If anger isn't dealt with, if the expectation is not amended, then that anger turns into bitterness, right? What happened with Cain? In verse 6, the Bible says, and the Lord said unto Cain, why art thou wroth? And why is thy countenance fallen? See, you can be angry and it doesn't have to turn into bitterness. I'm not telling you should be angry, but if you deal with your anger, it won't turn into bitterness. Cain did not. Cain says, God tells him here in verse 7, if thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted. See, we don't ask God to accept us. We bring what He accepts, right? And hey, He loves you even when you're a sinner. God commended His love to us, and that while we're yet sinners, Christ died for us. He brought the acceptable offering to the Lord, so we get saved. An acceptable offering has been made, but then we are become His workmanship, and we ought to, at that point, desire to bring that which is acceptable into that Christian life. And so Cain, God said, if thou do well, right? If thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door. He said, look, you can fix this. You can get right. It can be made better. You understand, Cain wasn't cursed yet. Right? His brother's still alive. He's not cursed yet. Verse number 8, and Cain talked with Abel his brother. He talked through the anger, but not in a good way. He allowed it to fester. I don't think these happened all in a day. I think this happened over months. And Cain talked with him, and then talked with him, and then talked with him, and then talked. He couldn't let it go. And he became bitter. And when he became bitter, he rose up against Abel his brother, and he slew him. Say, I'd never kill anybody. Well, the mental hospital's full of women and men who would never kill anybody, but they let enough hurt and bitterness and anger get them to that snap place where they had a break and they hurt somebody. Prisons are full of them that haven't been diagnosed or couldn't quite get the right lawyer. Right? We're full of people our systems are full of people who let hurt get so big they hurt somebody. Here we have it right here. Started with broken expectation that went to anger, that went to bitterness. They rehearsed it and they rehearsed it and they rehearsed it and they rehearsed it, and then they broke. Sin light at his door, he said, and then he killed him. You can say it this way: bitterness is anger that found a home. Right? You let it live there. You let that anger fester and spin and turn and boil and destroy. And he says in Hebrews 12 that bitterness defiles many. When you're bitter, your spouse is defiled, your kids are defiled, your coworkers are defiled, your church is defiled. And that doesn't mean you go hermitize yourself on top of a mountain somewhere. That means that you fix it. Let God fix it in your life. It says in Hebrews 12:15, where I was talking about looking diligently lest any man fail of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and thereby many be defiled. Bitterness is called a root because it hides deep down in the invisible. You can't always see it, but it's always there. It's like when and I've used this illustration 1,000 times, when you cut that rose bush down, it's still under the surface. And next year, it's going to come up. And it's going to be as big or bigger than it was before. And here's what's interesting. Rose bushes don't necessarily need great nutrition to do that. They're pretty good at it on their own. We cut some crepe myrtles down at our house because I don't like them near the foundation because of the way their root systems are. And so we cut a bunch of them down. Every year I see tens of those sprouts, those shoots coming up. And I got to get my weed eater out, and I just got to take them down every time I see them shooting up because they're still there. I've put grass killer. No, listen. I've put high intensity, probably causes cancer, grass killer all over that flower bed trying to get rid of them. And you know what? Every year, they pop up. Bitterness is like that. You can do whatever you want to, but it came from a broken expectation that you didn't deal with, and now you're bitter. Now you got to deal with the shoots and the roots, and you got to take it all to God and say, it's too big and too much for me. I need you. I'm going to have to call a professional to get rid of those crepe myrtles, which I have, because I've got to grade my yard since I'm flooding anyway. And so, a bitter person rarely suffers alone. They take it home. They leak into their children. They leak into their church. It leaks into their view of God, and suddenly God's not even good anymore. And it leaks into every new relationship. You ever wonder why somebody goes from one bad relationship to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next? I'm not trying to blame somebody. I know I'll get in trouble for victim blaming. I understand that. But there's a problem in that person's life. And if we could show them a new way of looking at people, a new way of dealing with things, they might not go from broken relationship to broken relationship. See, their expectations are now low, and they know that they can't. They feel that they can't see better, so they end up, even often subconsciously, finding worse, right? Because they're bitter, and it's taken its toll. Because the good people we'll get to point 4 next week. Because the good people that they could be in a relationship with see that bitterness and are tainted by that bitterness, and it causes it to have a hard time finding good people to be in a relationship with because of bitterness. Right? Makes sense? And what it come from initially? Broken expectations. I'm not saying 100% of the time, but I'm saying walk it back when you're done being hurt for a few minutes. When you can get clear-minded about whatever it is going on in your life, walk it back. I am very sure that the biggest problem that I'm having with grief right now is a broken expectation. And I'm struggling to reconcile that with the reality. And so I would venture to say that's often the case. So we got 6 more points we got to try to get through. But I think y'all got a lot of help. At least you can say, oh, I can identify. Oh, I can see. And we can start moving down that road. This is why I have a hard time teaching this in the counseling sessions, because it's really time. And so, anyways, we'll get to it. All right.